Hello and welcome to this quick buyer's guide on the Morris Minor, and I'm using for the subject of this video my own 1954 Morris Minor. This is a 1954 and this is a Series 2, identifiable by the cheese grater, as it was called, grill, also by the split windscreen and a few other details we'll talk about in a minute. The Morris Minor, I'm not going to go into details about production dates and so on. There's a lot of people out there who know a lot more about them than me, but having restored this one from the ground up, I like to think I know quite a few of the common foibles with them. The Morris Minor existed in the saloon body, which is probably the most common. There were 2 and there were 4-door models, this being obviously the 2-door. There was also the commercial van, the Morris Traveller pickup as well, and the Tourer, which was a convertible version as well. So quite a few different body styles and a few quirks and foibles with each of them. I'm going to mainly talk about the saloon because that's what I know best, but I'm sure there are lots of videos out there, people who can tell you all about the other ones as well. This being the Series 2, it's slightly different to the more common 1000 model, and also different to the low light. The low light is identifiable because obviously the headlights were set low around here. That was the series. Then there was the Series 2, which the lights moved up and out of the into the wings with the cheese grater grill and the split screen, and then moved on to the 1000 series, which went on to lose the split windscreen and had a different sort of horizontally slatted grill. Other things to look for in the 1000, it had a slightly bigger rear window as well. And although this has 1000 rear wings, the Series 2 rear wings sort of have a higher cutout. I wasn't able to find those whenever I restored this Series 2. Bumpers in the Series 2 are also slightly different to the 1000, and there's lots of other fine details as well. But what I'm going to move on and talk to you about is how you can look out and buy yourself a good one and not get caught out by one of the many rusty ones sitting around, and also ones that have been hacked and made a bad one out of. So let's move on and have a look at the bodywork and the chassis. The Morris Minor was made completely from steel, and as you all know, steel from British Leyland or British Motor Corporation likes to rust for fun. Rust proofing was not great in these vehicles, if slightly non-existent. Places to look out for, well, you name it, it'll rust. This particular car, whenever I started restoring it, 2 new chassis rails. Now it's going to be difficult to demonstrate that on the video, but the 2 chassis rails run underneath from the midpoint where this jacking point is up to the front, and they run parallel. Those are both completely rusted out and had been repaired multiple times. The floor inside will rust at the front and the back. The centre cross member, which is the level of the jacking point. Suspension mounting points here at the front and rear of the leaf springs, and where the torsion bars link in as well at the front, all rust. Other things to look forward to, there's a front cross member here, which when I say open the bonnet, I'll be able to show you that. That is the chassis really, and where that rusts. Bodywork, it's a unitary design, so the chassis is integrated into the body rather than a separate chassis, which I believe the commercial models had. But whenever you're going to buy one, feel under here, check for a single layer of metal that hasn't been sandwiched or patched. This is nice and consistent. These wings are in actually quite good nick. You want to check in behind here in the wheels. These splash panels can rust, as can the inner wings all the way through. And this particular car has had this panel replaced, and the entire new front chassis. That's this in around there, it's the suspension. Anywhere you can see here will get rust. That's the chassis leg there, and that's completely new as well. Moving around the side of the car, doors particularly rust along the bottom, mainly because the water runs down inside of the glass and sits in the bottom of the doors, and sometimes the drain holes in the bottom of the doors have blocked up and the water is not able to drain out. Therefore it gathers in the bottom of the doors and rusts. Opening the door, you can see a bit of a common theme regarding rust here. the door closing panel where the hinges mount, that will also rust. And in behind here is a kidney dish panel, and that will also, you guessed it, rust. If you have a very helpful buyer, sometimes they might let you take the door closing panel or sill cover here off, and you'll be able to look along that. This is the sill rail covered by the carpet, and you'll be able to inspect that. And I think that would be a good idea, depending on how helpful your buyer is. And maybe if they aren't willing for you to take it off, that might give you some suggestion, as there might be something to horrors to look out for. Obviously my floors are covered up with the carpets, but they can rust anywhere along here, over the gearbox tunnel, into the passenger seat, and then round the back. And then there's a sill type cross member here, and they can rust in behind that as well. Moving around the side, this car has fitted with trafficators. Obviously, great idea. Those were the indicators of the time. However, that is a hole in the bodywork, and holes in bodyworks like to let water in. So underneath this panel here was completely rusted out. Something to feel it. If you feel it along the bottom, you'll be able to check and see how consistent that is. Joints along the bottom. Interestingly, this one also has had new gutters. That was a tricky repair, and actually you can see the join here where I welded that up. And yes, it's not the tidiest, but you don't really notice it unless you're looking for it. So they can rust here, rust in underneath, or up the side of the roof. So, but some things to look out for there. On around the rear wings, much like the front, are detachable. These will also tend to let go along the top lip here. These rings, excuse me, the two wings are brand new, and they will also rust around the rear lights. These are particular Series 2 lights, different to the 1000 lights. In terms of the boot, if I open up here, this is a new panel here because the water will again gather in here, so it's always important to have a feel in here and check for solid metal. The boot floor is actually wood, so that's one less thing that rust about, but at least you can check in on the inner wings, both sides, and you can also look in around the wheels. So mainly rust. In terms of paint, all the colours are very readily available. These are very easy to paint. I paid for the paint on this one, but I think if you're a keen DIYer, you could do it yourself. Lots of colours available, and I'll not go into all the various details on those. The next thing I'm going to look at is the drivetrain. And here we are under the bonnet, looking at the venerable old A-series engine. Now, interestingly, this car should not have this engine. This is a 1098cc engine. I believe it should have a 948, but do be ready to be stand corrected. The very early series models have a flathead engine rather than overhead valve train, so they're identifiable with a completely different looking engine. This A-series engine was very popular and ran through really from the Series 2 all the way towards the end of production, and generally increased in capacity up to the 1098, which is what's in this vehicle. In terms of the engine, what you're going to look for, this car's just been driven, so I'm not going to take the radiator cap off, but take the radiator cap off. If your car's cold, look underneath it, and you're checking for any mayonnaise type substance that may suggest that a cylinder head gasket needs done, or if there's been any overheating issue, and that's always something you can barter with. Changing a cylinder head gasket in this vehicle is not difficult at all. You don't need to take the engine out, and can be done in situ. Other things to ask about are leaded conversions or unleaded conversions. This car is still running a leaded head, but an unleaded conversion may add some value as well. Other things, electronic fuel ignition or electronic ignition is now available, or it may have been alternator converted. It all depends whether you're going to want to look for an original car or not. Obviously my fuel pump should not be blue, but it was whenever I put it in. I think it adds a bit of character. This is the SU type pump, and some people might have fitted an electronic facet type pump or another. Other things in Drivetrain suspension is by these Armstrong lever arm dampers in the front, and it's also in the rear. Torsion bar in the front, leaf spring in the rear. Moving through, talking about the gearbox then. It's a 4-speed. Two different types of gearbox. This is a straight lever one from the short gear stick from the 1098, or the Series 2 have a longer gear stick which comes out underneath the dash. Both 4-speed. This one does not have synchro mesh on first gear, but does on second, third and fourth, and reverse is over towards the driver and backwards. The handbrake lever is also not quite correct for this car, it should be gold, so little things to look out for. Back axle is very simple, differential in the middle, 2 drive shafts out to the sides, and as I said, relief springs towards the back. All very easily accessible. Things always important to look out for: has it been serviced? Have the trunnions been greased? We've all seen horror stories of Morris Minor wheels falling off with ungreased trunnions, so definitely something to concentrate the mind if your wheel fell off your car. I'm sure you'll agree. Next thing I'm going to look at is the interior. So this is obviously the interior of a Series 2 model. Lovely vinyl seats and the gold dashboard, which I think looks really, really well. Very simple layout. You have a fuel, oil pressure gauge, fuel level and speedometer with odometer in the middle. Horn button and this lovely brown bakelite, and your marble effect steering wheel. I think it looks lovely. You have a glove box on the side there, wiper switch in the middle, and that's your charge lamp. This is your indicator switch here for the trafficators. It should be brown, but they're awfully expensive and hard to find, so I have had to make do with this cream one. 3 pedals, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, and sorry, I'm going out of focus there. That little silver switch is your dip switch for the headlights. Takes a bit of getting used to. Window winders, door pull, and a very generous back seat. Obviously the 4 doors will have a second row of doors. As you go into the 1000 models, some of them have duotone interiors, and the steering wheel changed, and the speedometer moved in towards the middle of the dashboard as well, and the general layout changed. All very smart looking interiors and very quintessentially British classic car. Other things, as I mentioned, the windscreen became a single piece rather than the split. What difficult to repair are the headlinings. This was quite the fight to get this one in, and although there's some wrinkles in it, it's significantly better than what it was before. There's actually like a wooden beam runs across the front to mount it to, and then the hoops, and it's all attached down behind the rear window. So that's not a whole lot of fun to try and replace, but something to look out for, and always something you can barter with. If it's got a sagging headlining or a dirty headlining, that's going to be a significant cost. Other things you can barter cost with are sagging seats, whether they need new foam or new webbing in the later seats, rather than these seats here are foam underneath with a metal dish, so obviously you can't replace that. But all very DIY, parts are very readily available. So if you're looking to knock a bit of money off, it's something you can barter with, that's something you could consider. So a lot of people always ask me what you should pay for a Morris Minor, and that's a very difficult question to ask. I'm not going to go through exact prices because this video will be online, and I'm sure prices, as with everything, are increasing. Probably the most valuable of all the Morris Minors are the low-light tourer versions. That's the convertible low-lights, and they fetch quite significant amounts of money. As the vehicles become more new and you go through the Series 2 into the 1000, the values do go down. Travellers fetch a premium, as do, and then the pickups are also quite valuable, I believe. Probably the 2 and 4 door 1000 versions are the least valuable. There's also the Minor 1 million, and there weren't very many of those made, and they're very easily identified by the lilac bodywork, but easily faked, I can imagine, so you might want to check out the chassis number with your local Morris Minor Owners Club. Hints and tips for going to buying them. Well, first of all, watch this video, and if you followed it this far, you might be quite serious. I would also advise taking someone from one of your local Morris Minor clubs along with you to look at the car, and someone who knows a bit more about it. will be able to advise you. And it's always good when you're going to buy a classic car to take an impartial observer along, in case you get talked into the romance of the thing and buy the wrong car. So I hope you found that video useful. That's provided some information on you, and you can go on and buy your dream Morris Minor. If you do, or if you have any questions at all, please put in the comments below. I reply to all my comments. Also hit the subscribe button to keep up to date with my classics, including this, the MGB and the Land Rover, and some other projects beside that as well. So hit the subscribe button, comment and like the video, and I'll catch you again next week with more videos. Thanks for watching.